Tommy Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma, and it is a pleasure to serve under your direction, even if you're about to leave. I normally on a Monday morning spend time travelling down from Scotland to take part in the afternoon's business. Today was a little different, though. Already here, I had the great privilege and honour of being interviewed live on Sky News on their platform that they have on College Green, and very interesting experience today as well, because there was a cornucopia of dissenters heckling and providing a narrative to the entire episode, including some members of the English Defence League and an evangelical gentleman who was encouraging me to repent my sins all the way through the interview. But in the middle of that experience, the redoubtable Adam Bolton asked me whether or not I would have faith in an independent commission to organise these TV debates. And I had to think about it for a little, because I don't want to just write anyone a blank cheque here, particularly not a new quango were it to be set up. But my response would be that, well, I would have more faith in an independent commission to organise TV debates than I do in the way that it is done at present, which is a chaotic and anarchic amalgam of political fixers getting together to try and do what is best for them, and the broadcasters trying to do what is best for them. So the idea of putting this onto a statutory footing and having written down the responsibilities and the rights that the Commission must adhere to in organising debates, that is very attractive to me indeed. And I think there are three immediate benefits that would arise from this. The first is that it would take the matter out of party politics, out of the hands of the political fixers, and actually provide a level playing field and a set of fair rules that everyone would have to abide by. And whilst they may, I'm sure, prove inconvenient from time to time or troublesome from time to some or other of the parties, they would nonetheless be a situation where everyone had to play by the same set of rules. The other reason why I would welcome an independent commission is that it would give us the opportunity to ensure that not just third party, but fourth, fifth, sixth, and other minority voices are represented in the debate. And the other reason why I think an independent commission would be useful as well is because it would allow some discussion to take place and some control over the format of the debates that take place. And we haven't spent much time this afternoon talking about format, but I would understand why a lot of people might be sceptical about the idea of television debates if they resembled the circus we have every Wednesday afternoon at Prime Minister's Questions, for example, which is an exercise in how the executive is not accountable to the legislature, with pre-arranged and quite often pre-rehearsed questions and answers being traded for the benefit of the TV cameras, but not really an exercise in scrutiny, not an exercise in debate. So allowing a more inquisitive format where people are allowed to truly challenge each other and are subject to perhaps third-party questioning and moderation as well, that seems to me something that would be extremely beneficial. Now, until the last two colleagues spoke, I was worried that this was a bit of a one-sided debate, actually, and that we were having this consensus among all of those that spoke previously. But there have, in the last 20 minutes or so, been some arguments put against the principle of having the television debates at all, never mind whether they're run by an independent commission or not. And I think it's important, as we consider how this argument develops, that we look at those arguments against and see whether or not they have validity and whether they in themselves could be countered. And I want to just spend a couple of minutes with some of them. The first is the suggestion, which has been hinted at, which this is somehow a matter of trivializing serious political discourse, that it's actually taking politics and important decisions and putting them on television in the name perhaps of entertainment. Well, it seems to me, actually, that by having an independent commission, that is the best way to guard against the trivialization of politics and it being presented as entertainment, because we can actually build into the process quite clear rules that prevent that from happening. And I also think that when party organisers or media or broadcast officers or whoever's responsible for this express concerns of this nature, I think they're being a little disingenuous, because these are the very same people who spend an awful lot of time and an awful lot of money trying to look at the very latest social media platforms and make sure that they are using them as effectively as possible, often by trivializing or certainly condensing the political message so that it is easily understood on those very limited platforms which they make use of. The other suggestion that's been put about, the other argument against it is that, well, how would you define what a leader is? And I want to just discuss here the role of the SNP in particular in such debates, because the honourable gentleman from Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk suggested that someone watching in Cornwall might not care very much about what the leader of the Scottish National Party would have to say were she to take part in a debate. And perhaps that would be because he's assuming that the leader of the Scottish National Party would talk about matters only in relation to Scotland, which is, of course, the principal brief of the SNP. But it seems to me that these debates also provide an opportunity for everyone in the place where the election is taking place, which for now would be the United Kingdom, for everyone to ask the question, well, what type of government do we wish to get out of this electoral process? And as the honourable gentleman knows, his side were successful and mine unsuccessful back in 2014 in the Scottish independence referendum, and therefore, for now, Scotland remains part of the United Kingdom, which means its representatives in this Parliament have every bit as much right as anyone else to determine and to influence the character of the government of the United Kingdom. So I think that people in Cornwall and everywhere else in the United Kingdom would be extremely interested to know what the criteria would be that the SNP would adopt in this Parliament where it's successful in the election, in terms of determining who should form the next government of the United Kingdom. Well, let's see if you do the same point. We'll take you first.
I'm very, very grateful. And just to clarify the point I was making, it's not that the people of Cornwall would not care about what the leader of the SNP would want to say, but she's not, and your party is not on the ballot paper in Cornwall. So people of Cornwall will not have the opportunity to vote SNP even if they wanted to. And if you extend that argument, or the argument you're pushing forward, which other parties do you include in the debate if they're also not on the ballot paper?
Can I just take the points? It's, I presume, relevant to the same point?
It is. The Honourable Gentleman, I thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way. The Honourable Gentleman makes the point about actually having the right people into the right debate. And you're quite right, well, the SNP has MPs in Westminster, quite right, they should be taking part in the Westminster debates. So shouldn't it be Westminster leaders that take part in Westminster debates, and then MSP leadership taking part in MSP debates? You wouldn't want Theresa May in the debate for our devolved Parliament, so therefore it shouldn't be Nicola Sturgeon having the debate for a Westminster. It should be your Westminster leader.
Well, you see, people have suggested earlier in this debate that, of course, the British system is not a presidential system. So it's not just a matter of who becomes the Prime Minister. And indeed, we don't elect Prime Ministers at the election, which is constitutionally absolutely correct. So for me, the purpose in TV debates isn't just to say, well, who's going to be the next Prime Minister and have some gladiatorial contest against the potential challengers for that position. It's a matter of saying, well, what do we want the government of the country to be? What are the serious issues it should adopt? What are its priorities? What is its general direction? And that is where TV debates can prove extremely useful in trying to educate the public and raise awareness of these very important issues. So, and having an independent commission, of course, gives us or them the opportunity to make sure that matters are conducted in a way which allows that to happen, rather than it being seen as some sort of presidential contest. There's also been a suggestion that, that somehow it's a bit... It's somehow not quite right that Parliament should be seeking to make regulations on broadcasters on this matter, that actually it's up to them to cover politics in whatever way they see fit. And the Honourable Gentleman, of course, was critical of Sky in particular and their editorial judgments that they make to cover their own campaign. Well, I would say this, that, of course, there is much regulation about the conduct and coverage of elections already in this country. We have a very highly regulated electoral system, and quite right too, so that people are able to challenge if something is seen to go wrong. So the idea of Parliament seeking to regulate The broadcast coverage of an election campaign or any other political campaign seems to be entirely consistent with the fair and democratic process that we have of trying to make sure that all of these matters are fairly regulated. There was also a suggestion put forward that somehow a national TV debate would undermine local campaigning. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. In my experience, as other colleagues have mentioned, people actually do tune into the TV debates because perhaps of the way it's presented as a television program, but the effect of doing that is to engage them with the political process more generally. And they then move on, having been, maybe not hooked is the wrong word, but having their appetite whetted a little bit, they move on to take more interest in the local campaigns and to ask questions, perhaps getting involved, perhaps turning up to hustings that might be there for the local candidates as well. And these two things can actually be perfectly symbiotic to each other. One can encourage the other. And frankly, anything that we can do to try and stimulate political awareness, political engagement, is going to be for the long-term benefit of our democracy. Can I return to this question of the role of minority voices in this? Because I do think it's very, very important that we stress, and I say this to the honourable gentleman from Wellingborough, I think in these debates we need to stress that this is not any longer, if it ever was, a two-party political system. There are third, fourth, fifth parties, and they have a right to be represented as well. So sorry, am I in danger of running out of time? Is it 10 minutes? Okay. Well, I am coming to an end, but I want to stress that, okay, I'm in danger of running over time, but I'll happily give one.
A powerful speech, but the whole point of my bill is to include a debate between the leaders of the smaller parties as well. So it's not, it's very important. I would hope the SNP would support the bill because it does include that provision.
Okay, well, that is welcome, and I think that is important. But I mean, to make the point, I would say this, that in the country that I represent in this chamber, the two major political parties, Labour and Tory, between them, added together, are lucky if they can command half of the electorate's support. So almost half of the entire electorate places its allegiance with parties other than the two main parties in the United Kingdom. And I think that needs to be understood and that needs to be built in to the process of doing this. In fact, we had the situation before Christmas when we had the shenanigans about the debate, which of course wasn't meant to be an election debate. It would have been a debate about Brexit and what to do. With a situation where the SNP, the third party in this House in terms of its representation, the second largest political party in the United Kingdom in terms of its membership, was likely to be excluded from a debate that was going to take place, well, it didn't in the end, but it was going to take place between the leaders of the Conservative and the Labour Party. And that's just all the more bizarre when we, and the Shadow Minister might want to respond to this, but it's all the more bizarre given that the leader of the Labour Party, as I understand it, has said that if there were to be a general election in the coming months, Labour would be committed in its manifesto to implementing Brexit. It might do it differently, but it would nonetheless be committed to implementing Brexit. So therefore, we were going to have a debate between a Conservative way of doing Brexit or a Labour way of doing Brexit, ignoring other voices who didn't want Brexit to happen at all, and conveniently ignoring the fact that now consistently a majority of people in opinion polls throughout the length and breadth of the United Kingdom don't want Brexit to happen at all. Well, it's, well, it is.
He's making outrageous claims about how his knowledge of what the British people... But let's face it, there was one referendum, the decision was made, your side lost, stop moaning about it.
No, well, see, I'm a Democrat and I believe that in a democracy people have the right to change their mind. And it is quite clear that a very large number of people who voted for Brexit 3 years ago have now changed their mind when they understand what it actually means. But leaving that to one side, my point is this, that we were in danger of having a debate before Christmas between the leaders of the two main political parties in the United Kingdom where the alternative to Brexit was not even going to be represented in the debate. So it's just as well, I feel, that that didn't go ahead. Mr. Davis, let me just finish by saying this, that a number of people will be concerned about the practicalities and as to how these things can be made to work. And of course, the uniqueness of the British system and its idiosyncrasies and how they can be respected. It should not be beyond our ability and our wit to be able to make this happen. In Scotland, there are 5 parties represented in the Scottish Parliament, and there are regularly 5-way debates on broadcast television and in other fora, which don't seem to present any great difficulty at all. There are many other countries throughout the world who have multi-party systems, who have proportional electoral systems, where, of course, it's usual for governments to be formed on the basis of coalitions between a number of different parties. They have no difficulty in being able to have all of the party views represented in broadcast televised debates. So if they can do it, I suggest that we should be able to do it as well. And let me just finish by saying to the Minister, I know she keeps being sent out to these types of debates and has to say that the government, this wasn't in the government manifesto. I'm sure it wasn't, so therefore the government isn't minded to do anything about it. But I think on this, at least I would ask her to accept that this should be an ongoing and open debate. And I would ask her to consider playing a role in stimulating that debate and in not closing her mind or her ears to the voices that are coming that says we need to look at much better regulation of something that has, in fact, become part of our institutionalised way of doing politics in this country anyway. We might as well accept that and try and make it the best that it can be.
Thank you very much.